Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the second International ESCO Symposium here in Istanbul, a city that bridges continents and ideas. After an inspiring first day, we will continue to our program, but first of all, we have a very important reminder for you. Dear participants, don't forget that this symposium can be a carbon neutral event by only your solidarity. So please don't forget to visit quick carbon roll-ups at the entrance of this hall. You will see a QR code and just please scan it to calculate your carbon footprint from this event. So after that, we will be able to zero it out. By saying this, let us begin with reflection on day one and a look ahead to today. Please welcome Mr. Pierre Langlois, Global ESCO Network, and Mr. Onur Ünlü from EYODER.
Thank you for the start of the day. Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, we have to sum up yesterday first, I believe. Yesterday was a very proactive day. Let me tell you this. We have discussed about many barriers in front of ESCO market and many creative solutions. And as for today, I'm happy to say that we are going to have a coffee break in the morning session. That's the first thing. I'm sure you are all waiting for this. The second thing is you are always welcome to bring your coffee and cookies with you to the room. And the third thing is, I witnessed myself this morning, our speakers are working 24/7. Even in the 8 a.m. in the morning, I have seen those papers flying around. They started discussions, and I asked them, why are you discussing this? And they told me that 1 hour is not enough for our session, so we are using this time to get the discussions going. So we are happy to have them. So no further additions on my side. I'm leaving the floor to Pierre to sum up yesterday and what to expect today.
Thank you very much, Onur. And again, thank you very much for everyone for attending. As far as the Global ESCO Network, we're very proud of this event. And the fact that you attended showed us that we made the right decision to create a symposium 2 years ago. I would like to thank again NSA to accepting to host the third one. So for those who were not there, you missed a little bit. It's going to be in Madrid next year. So a tough act to follow because the team here at EYODER have done a wonderful job. But we're very happy to be hosted in Madrid next year. And we hope that all of you will come and tell your friends and your colleagues to come as well. That's the purpose of the network, is to meet, exchange, take the time together, and exchange about topics related to energy performance contracting. And I've been to many events. This one and the previous one are really the ones where I like the most because there we go deep into topics. We exchange with practitioners. We learn quite a lot from each other. So just a little bit of a recap yesterday. It was a full pack session, a full pack day. Probably you were exhausted last night and you don't even remember everything that's been told. So just to remember, we talk about ESCO Association, success of the ESCO Association, their role, what they're doing, what they're able to change within the market. And I think it's very inspiring and many countries can learn from these associations. We had the role of international agreement and supranational regulation. So for us, in the field, we don't always recognize the need for these agreements or what they have as an impact on our business. It was pretty interesting. We talk about the national regulation or the lack of regulation. We talk about the framework support. Very interesting to learn from different countries how they do that. We have the development perspective. Where are we heading? How things will develop in the future. And we had Super ESCOs, a new emerging model that is starting to be picked up by many countries. So quite a full packed session yesterday. And you're in for a show as well today because there's going to be a lot more. So we're going to talk about practical implementation framework and facilitation, how actually things are done in the field with practitioners, experienced practitioners. We're going to revisit financing, a topic that is always in the mind of everyone. Without money, without capacity to invest, there's often no ESCO project. And we'll finish by success stories. So we got inspired by people who succeeded, by people who really made it up and actually demonstrate that that concept works in many, many countries. So thank you again for everyone, and my colleague Soren will close out at the end, and thank you again as far as the Global ESCO Network. For me, it's a real pleasure to be part of that network. I have a lot of fun with the friends at UNFCCC, and thank you again for EYODER and your tremendous and wonderful reception. Wonderful city, but on top of that, wonderful organization. Very impressed by what you're doing, Soren. Thank you so much for receiving us, and now let's start.
Dear guests, today's first panel will be about practical implementation for local governments. And moderating this important session is Mr. Serkan Emin, board member of EYODER, and our speakers, Mr. Rafał Cieślak from University of Warsaw, Ms. Geneviève Gauthier from Econoler, and Mr. John O'Rourke from CEFA, and Mr. Ingmar Hermans from Angli. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you. So, good morning. Thank you for being here in the very first panel of the second day. The audience is much better than I expected because we had a very, very tiring day yesterday, as Pierre already mentioned. So thank you for being here. I'd like to start by thanking UNEP, EVO, Global ESCO Network, and of course, Turkish Energy Efficiency Association, EYODER, for hosting us here and for organizing this event. And I'd like to start by introducing our panelists first. We are going to discuss the practical implementations, how ESCO implementation frameworks work, and the EPC facilitation for local governments. This is the topic of our panel today. My name is Serkan. I am the board member of EYODER here, and I am also a managing partner of a small ESCO. So I'm going to start introducing my panelists first. They have a very long resume here, but because they are very qualified people in their fields, and I'll be delighted to listen to them today because they have too many things to say. So we met very early in the breakfast, so I told them that we have only 1 hour to discuss. As Onur already mentioned, we made our first hour, so this is the second hour of our discussion, so it's going to be enough for us, I think, now. So I'm going to start with John. John has been in the ESCO business for almost 30 years and on 2 continents, one in USA and most recently in Europe. He has completed energy efficiency projects, energy performance contracts close to $1 billion for large industrial plants, naval and air bases, hospitals across industrial and commercial markets. And he has very innovative ideas about the EPC frameworks. We are going to listen from him from the public sector, public procurement, and how they are developing the framework for that. And also, he's advocating for a market for power purchase agreements, and without energy efficiency being priced and risk managed as a commodity, it cannot be scaled from a financial point of view. So we are going to hear his very valuable ideas today. Second, Ingmar, thank you for being here today. Ingmar has worked with cloud technology since 2007 and had over 15 years of enterprise business experience at Kodak first, and then he became a business and IT consultant in 2013. And he has delivered some of the largest and most complex pan-European and global implementations in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Since 15 years, he's been a consultant for energy efficiency facilitation, which is today's topic, actually. And he's trying to bring demand and supply together from a facilitation perspective, notably through the energy performance contracting model. He has run quite a few projects in Belgium, where he's located. He predominantly worked in Netherlands, France, and Germany around facilitation of energy efficiency projects. He's the Chief Business Development Officer in Angli, which is a digital platform to overcome most of the ESCO market barriers with digital tools. So he has an innovative idea there as well, and a facilitation framework there. And Geneviève, she is the National Director of Econoler, Canada. Geneviève is a seasoned expert in energy transition with nearly 25 years of experience advising governments, utilities, and the private sector. As a national director at Econoler, she manages the team dedicated to Canadian consulting services. She also serves as an invited professor at HEC Montreal. Did I pronounce it right? Right?
Yep.
Okay. Over the course of her career, Geneviève has acted as the owner's consultant for numerous energy performance contracts, and she's bringing deep expertise in a wide range of contractual frameworks, which we are going to discuss today. Geneviève is also the president of the board of directors at Ecotech Quebec, which is a clean technology cluster. And finally, Rafał. Rafał is a lawyer. He's not an engineer, he's not a technical guy, so he's bringing a very different perspective to our panel. He's a lawyer and a professor in University of Warsaw in Poland. He's been dealing with public procurement law, EU funds, public-private partnerships, PPPs, and energy performance contracts. He's an advisor to the Polish government on these subjects. His law firm formed a consortium with the Polish National Energy Conservation Agency for a European-funded project which began a year ago, and he's going to mention about that, in order to develop the ESCO market in Poland. He will be sharing his view about the current status of ESCO market in Poland, the outcomes of Polish ESCO market development project, including research on public sector, ESCOs, and financial institutions. So thank you all for being here today. Your insights and your comments will be much appreciated today, I believe. And I'm going to start with Rafał. Rafał, I believe you have a presentation, and you would like to present your project about the development of the Polish ESCO market first, right, and your framework there, and then we're going to start with Rafał's presentation first. Rafał, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here. I really appreciate that. I'm one of a few lawyers here, probably, so I'll start with the facts. I'm from Poland, and Poland is a country in Central Eastern Europe. In fact, in our region, it's the biggest EU country. And we've been struggling with EPC and ESCOs for nearly 20 years, but the market is still kind of an emerging ESCO market in Poland. So what we did for now, before I'll move to the project itself.
See from there as well.
Yeah, thank you. I want to tell you that according to our national plan for building renovation, which was drafted just a couple of months ago, we've got 15 million buildings in Poland in total, of which 5.5 million are housing facilities, and we've got around 600,000 public utility buildings. At least half of them needs now or will need in the nearest future renovation and modernization. So there is a really lot to do. Unfortunately, the building renovation plan doesn't set any financial framework for this. So for sure there is a huge space for ESCO and for private financing. The other fact is that according to our Ministry of Climate and Environment, we've got only 17 ESCOs active on our market, and out of them only 3 deal with public sector. The rest is not much interested in this sector. I'll be talking about it a bit later, about the reasons. According to the legislation, Well, we have transposed nearly the Energy Efficiency Directive into our Energy Efficiency Act. However, the fun fact is that probably we're the only country in the world where the legislation refers to Public-Private Partnership Act. So there's only one article in our Energy Efficiency Act saying what the energy performance contracting is. It defines ESCOs and so on, and simply refers to PPPs. So maybe it's not the best solution, but still we've got the legislation. Moreover, we have developed guidelines on energy performance contracting, and I shared these guidelines with our global ESCO network over a year ago. We've got contractual templates and other tools to support ESCO development. So the question is why only few projects, EPC projects, are performed, our contracts are signed a year. I think that it's like approximately 3-4 contracts in public sector. I'll be speaking about public sector. So probably the answer is that there's no strong policy, and we were talking about it yesterday a bit, and our government simply transposes the EU directive and promotes some tools for ESCO market development, but it's definitely too little. And that is why, together with our Polish National Agency for Energy Conservation, we developed the project. Yeah. So this is on the previous slide. We do not have the previous slide now. Whatever. As you see at the slide, the project will last for 3 years, and the budget is quite small because it's only 650,000 euros. So you may ask what we can do with such a budget. But here is the answer, because this is the second and the last slide, and here are project outcomes. So first of all, we formed the one-stop shop facilitator using our teams of technical, financial, and legal advisors. And we are trying not only to facilitate at least 4 projects, as you see, but we are trying to facilitate the ESCO EPC market in general. So what we did so far is that we performed really deep research on Polish local governments. Over 300 of municipalities took part in our survey, and we got some interesting answers about barriers facing development of our ESCO market. I will mention only 2 of them, because we indicated like 15 at least, the most important, but 2 of them. First of all, there is a huge competition from the EU funding and national funding as well, which doesn't help, unfortunately. Even though there are some incentives, like in regional or national programs, we can combine, so we can blend financing, the private financing with the grants. But our local governments, as we discussed with Geneviève a couple of days ago, they are kind of a grant addicted. So they prefer simple solutions, simple grants to be honest, more complicated energy performance contracting procedures and contract itself. In terms of financial institutions, banks in Poland do not have any experience in financing ESCO projects, but there is an appetite for this, and especially our Polish Development Bank, which is very experienced in public-private partnerships. They are very open for ESCOs, even for smaller projects, what's interesting. So they said, like, if CapEx were let's say, 5 million euro, they are interested. So I'm referring to yesterday's discussions on that subject. And ESCOs, why I mentioned that only 3 ESCOs are interested in public sector, because of public procurement law and tough procedures, they prefer to make business with industry and with private sector. So this is another well-known barrier that was confirmed by our research. We've just contracted 4 municipalities. We have assessed projects, and we are about to start the tendering procedures. So probably I'll come back to that later. One last thing I want to say is something we called EPC ESCO Club. Because as you see, there are other outcomes, but they are not that much important. They are just tools. But EPC ESCO Club, in Poland we do not have an ESCO association yet, but we're working on it. And the first step we did was establishing kind of a network similar to our global ESCO network, because it's an informal organization. For now, 3 or rather big ESCOs joined the club, and a couple of municipalities, couple of energy advisors. So I hope the organization will develop, and our goal is that after the project will be finished, we'll establish association, but it will not be dedicated only for ESCOs, but also for other stakeholders, like public sector, like advisors. Thank you for now.
Thank you. Well, this club idea is very interesting. Maybe we can build on that. Onur, Soren, and Pierre.
But Serkan, it's not a golf club. So,
Okay.
Shame.
Okay. I was thinking about the happy hours.
Okay.
Okay, now I'd like to pass the floor to John, based on Rafał's inputs. And John, you have a vast experience about over almost 30 years about these energy performance contracts. And I would love to hear your ideas about these frameworks and your experience and your point of view regarding the practical implementations of ESCO business model, even in USA, in Ireland, in Europe, based on your experiences and the barriers and so on. It's all yours.
Sure thing. Thank you. And it's very nice to be here this morning. I guess when you mention club, it's a good segue into I'm here representing as the chair of SEFA, which is the Sustainable Energy Finance Association. And that was set up in May of 2023. And the idea was, given work that we had done on various different EU projects on different subject matter that tackled barriers in different markets, one of the conclusions of one of those programs was that we really have to get the decision makers that are on the ground in the club. So we set up the Sustainable Energy Finance Association. It's not an ESCO association. It's not a manufacturing association. It's an association that pulled in the customers. For example, Jones Lang LaSalle, major global property manager. It pulled in retail energy providers. So it pulled in ESCOs, it pulled in technologies, it pulled in consultants and service businesses and financials. And the idea was that one of the big experiences in Europe, not so much in the US, is that it's a pretty crowded marketplace for people that want to sell in to this whole energy transition. And that can be very, very confusing. So what we wanted to do was to really introduce clarity to different stakeholders. So we set up the association, and we're now up to 25 people in 18 months, not bad. Some of them are, the Jones Langs, the electric utilities, you know, these are hard folks, as you well know, in associations to pull in, but they were vital to allowing us to understand and get clarity around the market, what the market opportunities are, and what the real barriers are. And we built it, you know, so we have really 4 pillars which CIFA operates in. And finance, and by finance I mean connecting finance to practitioners. We have capacity building, and that's really accomplished through EU project work, where CIFA is a partner that will do a lot of the marketing and dissemination on behalf of members that are participating. And then we have policy. And policy, no matter what way you cut it, it's important. It's really important. Although what's more important is transposition of EU policy at the national level. And that's where we see the breakdowns. So one of the added benefits that CIFA brings is that it has a very diverse membership from different countries that have very different experiences on the policy front, but also on the implementation front. We're very focused on, we've identified after 18 months, look, we've identified what everyone else in this room has identified, right? Is that in the public sector, procurement is a problem.
Yeah.
And one-stop shops are a solution,
Yeah.
but it's not the end all. You know, one-stop shops are a very, very good solution at the local government level, at the municipality level, but at the overarching national government level, there's needs to be procurement frameworks that are designed and developed to where you can scale. The finance guys are not interested, you heard it yesterday, unless it's 50 to 100 million. In Europe, in the US, you know, we would do one contract that was 85 million in a chemical plant. That's a different market, and which is also a very interesting point, is that we have lots of biases out there depending on what you do, who you are, and how you fit in to the supply chain of energy transition. And it really is not a one solution fits all. So procurement in the public sector is, you know, and I see the EU projects that are coming out there, and lots of people are working in different countries. And people may say, well, you know, that's kind of research and development. What does that really accomplish? Well, you know what? It accomplishes a lot, because you can pull a team of people together that can focus on the subject matter in a non-biased fashion and pull their experience out of the market and maybe produce conclusions and be able to guide, in our case, our membership on where and how to play. What's also very interesting is that, and I haven't heard it spoken a lot in the conference, is that for me, the commercial office space market, the commercial markets are probably the most exciting. And the reason being is that there are clear and present drivers in the market for large funds that own commercial real estate to meet an ESG threshold. And most of these folks, behind the scenes, it's not written about much, but there's a tremendous amount of activity that's happening in the real estate space in order to stave off the prospect of managing stranded assets and what to do. That pressure is multiplied by the fact that the pillar banks in the national countries, where the operational funding is coming for these realty funds, are seriously under pressure to either make a decision to divest the asset or renovate it. And that's a whole other body of science, which I won't get into here. But there's a growing market. And so from a CIFA standpoint, we wanted to focus on the commercial office sector space, because it's a market and it's scalable. And we wanted to focus on the procurement side for the public sector. And I will get into this a little more.
In the second round.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Thank you, John.
So let me pass it on.
So, but these one-stop shops are kind of the getting momentum, I see, because like CIFA, Sustainable Energy Financing Association, your association, Ingmar's company is also playing the role of one-stop shop, but in a different way. I'd like to hear his experience and ideas regarding their practical implementations in Belgium, Netherlands, and French markets, where he has a vast knowledge and experience. And in their organization, they are trying to digitalize this one-stop shop and framework. So Ingmar,
correct.
Would like to hear from you. Yeah.
Very good.
Can we have
there we go.
Ingmar's presentation? Yeah.
If Geneviève can pass me the clicker, then
Yes.
I'll move it along. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So immediately I like to build upon where John was, right? From a framework perspective and having in there the one-stop shop. Pierre said it very correctly yesterday. This is the vehicle, right? It is not, the end game. It is the vehicle, and what I'm looking at today is particularly to create the tool set, right, that enables this vehicle to move, right, to gather some momentum. And obviously, it's no surprise to you if I say, technology, not as in techniques, because also John mentioned technology, but not only the technical part of the measures, the technology that comes with that, but the digital technology to serve, the process of procurement, of the design of a project, of its overall outlay, the portfolios, the programs that go with it, give that a home. Because yes, there is still a lot of complexity. In this room, talking about ESCOs and energy performance contracting is obvious, but as stated also by Rafał, it's not so obvious to many of the municipalities, right, that get to relate to it. Federal authorities, my background is more in Belgium. We're working very closely towards the goals that also Pierre mentioned yesterday of very long-term contracting, and therefore digitalizing that process to help design those portfolios, programs, and projects from the smallest scale, because I like Rafał's remark, that needs to be able to capture small projects, but ambitious ones, we'll get into that later on, as well as, the full programs, and making sure that we take the complexity out of the process and simplify it so it respects the complexity, the regulatory, framework that comes with it, the accounting principles, the financing that goes with it, but also make sure that we give a vehicle, a window, literally, right, on the internet, right, that provides the in-route to this programs and one-stop shop vehicle. That's where we come from. And, having my good colleague and friend Lieven will talk about this in the next session, but having, 30 years plus experience, as many people also have in this room, we know these things are missing today largely, right? They're done, at national geographical level, perfect, but then coming and also into the challenge we'll talk about more, into the scalability, right, of the framework. This is where digitalization will play a critical role. We didn't hear so much of it yesterday, but I'm going to just throw it out there. The age of artificial intelligence that we are in, right, that allows us to design tender, contract, measurement and verification, all the good things, right, that this ESCO association also stands for, provide, again, that tool set that drives that. That's what we're after of doing. You see, it is not small scale, right? So even from a Belgian to European, essentially, perspective and then beyond, you see there the numbers, right, on this slide. It's like, 250 plus energy transition projects, so it's not just EPC, but, EPC is a big part of this journey. And then we're going to renovate, as the core of it, it's the e-renovation of 4+ million square meter of large building space, on a recurring basis. And that is what we will say is giving, again, the tool set to deal with those challenges. Without dwelling on them, we can see, though, is, I come from a facilitator background, right? Yep. As Serkan introduced me. And in that, one of the bigger challenges, and again, we'll talk about barriers again after this, is about physical facilitation. There's consultants. We need consultants because our end user customers don't always know exactly how to work through the process. Fine. What we're saying also in the ENGLI context is you got to be able to give the tool set to those end user customers and start the journey themselves much faster. That they understand, what is my homework, what are my prerequisites that I'm dealing with, so that I can enter into the design and the tendering and the contracting of my projects, programs, and portfolios much faster. So we can stimulate that demand side, right? Because we've seen the stats yesterday. Despite it still growing, the overall market nearly that is captured by the ESCOs, what we're missing is the hockey stick effect in the growth, from a demand perspective. Therefore, again, this window that we put out there to any end user customer organization, small or big, that allows to scale into this market is to us critical, because it needs to have that, the big third bullet here, it needs to have that self-service capability to keep flowing, to get that demand visible. It doesn't mean it will turn always into a project or into a program, but it does mean we get to see, in my world of digitalization, it's all about data. If there's one thing around in this industry, it's data, right? A lot of it. Therefore, to structure that data and gain insights from it, not because it's proprietary or it needs to be protected by legislation, but by learning from what is out there much faster, so it doesn't always need that physical facilitation, but it can be moved to a virtual level, gain immediate insights, standard 80-20 rule. That will help enormously in order to accelerate that capability towards unlocking more projects and see the hockey stick effect coming forward. Now, everybody in this room is convinced energy services is the way forward, right? This is why we're here, ESCOs, ESCO communities. Yeah, okay, fine. However, that proven ESCO model still has that intrinsic capability, but again, lacks the scalability, and that's where we come in. Again, I'm also never afraid to talk about standards. It's like a bit of a dirty word in the digital space. You say, what do you mean standardization? We don't need standards. We need to be able to understand the parameters that go into a platform so we can set up our projects, programs, or portfolios. That's great. But you certainly in this community, I hope, and I'm singing to the choir here, is to say standards are critical to take the opinions out of things, right? Is to take the bias away and say, no, we have standards. There's wonderful initiatives, the logo of EVO being up there, as the strongest global standard around measurement and verification. These are big things, in our industry. So going there, but increasing the speed at which we roll them out, bring them to end users from small local municipalities, in public authorities, all the way up to where John is, the big, real estate, commercial type of organizations. That's what we're after.
Thank you, Ingmar. I think these self-service themselves is a very important, remark there. That in order to scale up these EPCs and the public institutions and also private institutions to be able to self-serve them and to increase their own knowledge about these EPCs is an important remark, and we are always waiting for that hockey stick effect. I've been waiting more than 20 years, so hopefully it's going to speed up a little. Geneviève, you have a vast experience, especially about the facilitation of these EPCs.
Hockey sticks as well.
Yeah.
Being from Canada, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yesterday evening, I asked Pierre why people just fight before the match between US and Canada when the hockey match starts, because I watched it 10 times and I couldn't understand why. Pierre explained it to me twice. I still didn't understand. So maybe this time you can explain it, Geneviève, in front of 100 or 100 plus people, maybe in a more polite way than Pierre explained. So I'd like to hear your insights, and you have a vast knowledge about the barriers, the client side especially, which is very much valuable for all of us, for the ESCO market industry experts here, because we sometimes, technical people and even the finance people, we are very much focused on our own work, but not the client side. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, and yeah, you have your slides there.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to share my experience and learn from the experience worldwide. As you mentioned, I lead the Canadian team of Econoler that's facilitating EPC contracts. So I come with a very different perspective, because in my practice and the practice of my team, we always work with the client that has to face the ESCO and is receiving the energy performance contracting. Over the last 15 years, I've seen dozens of projects. Like Pierre Langlois said yesterday, in Canada, it's a mature market, but still we haven't picked up the full potential yet. Mature, why? Because there's a public sector framework. And Canada's a very large country, very few people, but even that, there's like 10 different little countries in Canada, so there's different scheme even in the public sector. So I had the occasion to facilitate share saving schemes with national defense, which they launched like dozens of millions of dollars of project over the past years. We've worked facilitating also guaranteed saving scheme in Quebec with school board and hospitals, so mainly in the public sector. In the commercial sector, it's still very, I would say, unmature. There are few companies that's very difficult to identify them that are selling like single technology EPC, which they don't really call themselves ESCO, so it's very hard to pick up, but they guarantee the performance of what they're doing. But very little penetration in the commercial sector. There are some ESCO that has tried to work in the commercial sector with the guarantee scheme with, in my opinion, like little success, and I explain why. Some bad experience, some good experience, but as you know, bad experience, like the whisper and the rumor goes pretty fast.
Yeah.
And lately, as Pierre presented yesterday, like Sofiac, which is a super ESCO in the share saving scheme. So all to say that there are different schemes in terms of how you procure, the different steps, and so on and so forth. And I had the occasion to see them all, and I observed quite a bit what's happening, what makes a good project. And I've seen good projects go into legal proceeding, because I also serve as a technical witness in those cases. I've seen very bad project that the client has said, well, the ESCO was so good, I will propose them for an award. So what's good and bad? What's a good project? What's a bad project? To the ESCO, to the client, to all different stakeholder change. And this is the expertise or the experience I want to bring forward. And is a good project, is a project that's on time? Is it on budget? Is it a project that was going to renew the asset that was on the urge of being obsolete? Is a good project meeting 100% of the saving, exceeding it or not? Is GHG, we talked about energy efficiency, and GHG is a good project, GHG avoided. So this is all about the circle, right? So in EPC, there are different stakeholders, the financier, the ESCO, the client, and the clients because our management team, the financial team, the legal team, the technical team, and we see our role as facilitator as one who's trying to bring and find a path between all those objectives that are nearly the same and not the same, and find a path so that the project goes forward. And if the project goes forward, it's good for the ESCO market, it's good for the client, it's good for the ESCOs, it's good for everybody. So this is what we do as facilitator. And if I cut it short, because I can answer questions on all different schemes we've seen in Canada, but the EPC is really like there are technical component to it, financial component to it, and legal component to it. There are different steps, and I think what could really help the EPC market explode and like be exploited to its full potential, is that to understand that the client, they find it complex. It's like we talked about it, the Formula One race car, and facilitator are like the autopilot. We help client navigate through the procurement process, which is a little bit not complicated, but different from what they're used to, and what's the role of the IGA, and then MNV plan, and then the MNV report, and commissioning report, and all those stuff. So it's things that to us in the ESCO market, in the EPC world, we understand well, but that the client, they don't really understand well. And even if like the ESCO and the client speak the same language, sometimes there's a misunderstood of what really are the steps and so on. So the facilitating process, which I believe is really, and in Canada, by the way, almost all projects have facilitator.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, almost. In the public sector, take it for granted, you'll have a facilitator. We are involved, obviously, with SOFIAC as project manager for SOFIAC, but even that, there are like some ESCOs that are trying to go into the private sector, and the company were like, yeah, we know how it works, and the ESCO said, well, I think you should hire a facilitator, because it's really something that's taken for granted, and we help navigate through the different process, and it's all about trying to find the common spot, the common objective, the common path for the project to go forward, and that's basically our role.
Thank
we
you
are
very
the
much.
autopilot on the Formula One race car.
But I remember you had an analogy about the Ferrari, right? Was about
it was a
project
little
and the
bit
bad project.
catastrophic analogy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to provoke you, just to give that example.
Yeah, I can give it.
Because I love that example. Yeah.
To me, like EPC is a really fancy tool that can bring us like really far into like energy savings and decarbonization and so on and so forth. But when it's not used properly, it's like someone that just got his driver license, get excited that he has a Formula One whatever race car, and then just boom, bang in the wall. So it's something that it's very neat tool to accelerate energy transition, but it needs like expert driver.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Can I have one question to you? Because you mentioned it. Does it happen often, or from time to time, that these are the lawyers who kill projects? Because lawyers tend to kill business sometimes, you know it. And as a lawyer, I have to ask this question in public.
You may want to. Don't.
Okay.
Yes, close your ears.
Well, I'm happy to say in the public sector, no, because there are frameworks and there are like standard contracting and so on and so forth. So even if the lawyer doesn't get the contract, we have to say, well, it's government type of approved contract, right?
Okay.
So we don't really care what you have to say. I wouldn't say it's stopped, but it slows down. Because the lawyers are not really like used to that type of contract, and sometimes it's like tedious contract, 80 pages with a lot of different technical terms and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't say they stop, but it could slow down quite a bit.
Yeah, we've got a very similar experience in Poland, especially working with the local lawyers, because they are always local ones. And we apply some standards that are understood by ESCOs, by market, by banks. And they, from time to time, they stop simply projects. They don't agree on certain provisions. They say that they've got their own view on the matter, and this is the end of the discussion, because the mayor of the city, for instance, is depending on his lawyers. So it happens to be a problem in many projects in Poland, for instance.
More or less same here in Turkey as well, yeah. So John, Lawyers? I think it would need another hour for us, right, for regarding the lawyers. But maybe regarding the barriers and commercial, and it's not only the public sector. I mean, of course, the topic of our panel is the local governments and the public sector side. But I think it would be nice to compare at least a little bit between the public sector and the commercial market, the barriers, and your opinions, of course, about all what Geneviève already mentioned.
Fair enough. Look, in the public sector,
yeah.
If you have frameworks, you're 90% there on any kind of legal contentious stuff.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my earlier point, is that in Europe, for those countries that don't have frameworks in place, like good solid procurement frameworks, are really just kidding themselves, because the idea is to scale, both for the ESCO, right? It's a tough business, ESCOs have to have at a minimum 3 senior core competencies. Technically, they have to be very astute and be able to operate across multiple environments. That means that you're looking at 25, 27 years of experience, and you've got to be out there and done that. You've got your structuring, which are, really smart MBA types with a finance background that can structure contracts. You need that in-house. If you don't have that financial, engineering, core competency, you're not in a position to really evaluate the risks in any given project. You just can't. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that it just slows down the whole process. It's also, which I haven't heard here, but I know in the US market, the most sought after candidate in the US market is the business developer. Because it is not easy to develop and shepherd a project through the process that Geneviève just spoke about. I mean, these are the best paid people in the ESCO market in the US, are people that can truly develop this.
Yeah.
Because they need to be able to be multifunctional. They have to understand the core competencies, and more importantly, respect what has to be done in each function in order to deliver a good project. You don't see so much of that in Europe, and we don't see much of anything in Europe because the frameworks are not there. And they probably could take a page out of the US book from an IDIQ standpoint, where they need overarching national indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. And if they're put in place, the mechanism to deliver is defined, and there's plenty of work for the facilitators and all the consultants that will support that. Sometimes I think we get confused around who's the lead. True, who's the lead? Is it the finance guy? Is it the facilitator? Is it the ESCO? Who is the lead?
Still confused.
The lead is the customer. And the marketplace, and the design of that marketplace. So, in the commercial marketplace, you have, I'll speak to one project that CIFA is currently working on, which is, it's a European project, Gear Up, and you should follow. It was inspired by Meets that came out of Seattle.
Okay.
And this is, we really hold true to the fact that energy efficiency has to be on par with solar and wind energy. There is no reason why, if one makes an investment in a facility and you have measured avoided cost, or consumption, that can't be structured in a PPA. So, and until, we're also of the opinion that until such a time as energy efficiency becomes a commodity, for lack of a better word, a resource, a transactable resource, we're wasting our time. That's an opinion.
That's an important opinion. I mean, I'm very interested in that, yeah.
We're going to test that opinion. So we have a pilot happening in Spain, and we have a pilot happening in Dublin, in Ireland. One in Madrid, and one in Dublin. And basically it's, should I take a minute just to describe this?
Please.
So it can be complex to follow this without a PowerPoint, but we're in the middle of the project, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions, so I really didn't want to put it up there until such a time as that we're firm in some of our assumptions. So you have the parties to this transaction in the commercial office space, okay, is one, you've got the building owner. The only thing he does is provide the real estate. That's important. But along with that real estate comes an agreement directly from the building owner to the ESCO that gives him a 15-year energy tenancy privilege. And the reason for this is that in the event that that building is sold, well, when you sell a building, you don't throw out all your tenants. So your energy tenant moves with the building. You have your ESCO, who signs a power purchase agreement with the retail energy provider. And in Ireland, we have a retail energy provider that will purchase efficiency energy, which is the avoided energy. And then you have your building owner property manager, okay, because these are, as in the federal government, we know who the gatekeepers are, but in the commercial world, the CBREs, the JLLs, the Jones Langs, they're the gatekeepers. And if they're not playing, you're not playing. This is just a hard reality of working in that space. And honestly, you don't want to play without them. But you have to identify the right role for them. And in the case of the commercial space, the facilitator is a fantastic role for the likes of JLL is the partner on the Dublin gig. Because they have all the data. At the heart of this is CIFA will be acting as an independent third-party certifier. Now, I will tell you, as part of the European project, we've been able to, we're designing that with the University of Thessaloniki that are building the IT infrastructure, doing the coding and blah, blah, blah. But the heart of it is the EVO documentation. And in fact, in all of our agreements, we are referring back to the EVO glossary of terms so that we are already meeting the standards and people understand what we're talking about. And that's especially important when you're looking to put a new initiative out on the street. So benefits. So why would the customer do this? Higher yield, ladies and gentlemen. Higher yield. And that's what these guys, this is what these guys think about. Higher yield. There's no passion with this group of owners, it's about yield. They have a real clear and present risk, like I spoke earlier, of a stranded asset, and they have to de-risk their portfolios or they're going to get caught. And their cost of capital on the next deal is going to be 100, 200, 300 basis points above what their competitors are operating in that local or regional market. So this is a key competitive threat for those same folks. They obviously get an energy infrastructure upgrade. Wonderful. But more importantly, they get an improved operating asset.
Absolutely.
And if there's not enough drivers and those benefits don't speak, then you need to move on. You need to talk to a customer where that really is the case.
Absolutely.
So we're very excited. You can track this initiative on the CIFA website. We'll have lots of webinars, etc. So those who want to learn more about it, please feel free to reach out.
I will do that because this new idea is very interesting, actually, especially from the monetization of the energy efficiency. That's especially in my country, and probably in most of your countries as well. The monetization of the outcomes of energy efficiency is hard because you're not generating something, you're avoiding something, and you're trying to monetize something that you avoid. How can we monetize that? Actually, it's the question, $1 million question, maybe $1 billion question. So this idea might be opening some new windows for us. So Ingmar,
yes.
What do you think about it, and
Absolutely.
Also your opinions about the commercial and the public side as well?
I got passionate based on the discussions with John here around three things. We spoke about expertise, right? So absolutely, the finance vehicles, the understanding, the hard numbers as well as the structure to put around it is number one. The legal framework, equally important, just to latch onto it. From an expert perspective, good lawyers, right, Rafał, are enablers, right? They are not showstoppers. They should be seen as enablers and treated as such, towards the overall contracting side. So that's another expert, right? Then obviously, in this big room, right, technical, functional, everything around technology, that's equal other level of expertise. So experts, right, is number one. John spoke also about leaders, right? So yeah, who's in the lead? I may disagree with him that it's always the customer who's in the lead. The customer is often okay to be led by the hand, exactly as Geneviève said, right? So if there is value, in the facilitation job, for instance, then the customer is willing to be led by the hand. But you got to be quite, I just don't want to say prescriptive, but I just did. In the sense that they want to see that road, right, that they're walking on. And what is that roadmap? How is that defined? And how can I walk on it so at least I be seen to be in the lead, to get to on this road. As I often say, simple analogy. You have the big highway over here, which is Geneviève's, EPC Facilitator road. But obviously, there's always the small, nice roads beside it. We know this from any management training. As long as our customers, are on the small roads and they don't understand where the big highway is for them to go towards, they're never going to get there. So they're not always in the lead. That would be my opinion. But that's okay. So leadership, yes. Which brings me to a huge barrier, right, to many of these energy transition projects. It is ambition. Right? And we spoke about that at length within this panel pre-discussion, is around organizations, be it very much also around the national frameworks and legislations and public bodies that are there, that are saying, you can get going with these projects, you can get to the 15, 20%, even 30% savings, all great. Get going and you will find your other projects. Wrong, right? Time out. I think that's what we all said, as a panelist here, saying, no way. If you do it like that, in the end, you're killing your market because then you may get some benefits, How did you call it, John?
Retro-commissioning?
Retro-commissioning.
Oh, cream skimming?
Yeah. Cream skimming.
Cream skimming.
Low-hanging fruit, whatever we want to call it. But if that's what we're doing, we're not in the right ball game, right? We don't get to the right ambition levels. And again, that's what we talked about also after this panel. But it's a huge barrier.
Yep.
It's to, I always say, kick people a conscience before they actually want to start with the project or program or portfolio management. They got to understand that they cannot be in this without having the proper ambition level. And rather to think before you want them to act is much more important, is to create that context and create that framework. That to me, from a change management perspective, is crucial. And we need to take our job very seriously as ESCOs and ESCO associations to instill that ambition into the governments we work with, into the municipalities, the cities, the commercial owners even, but they often have healthy ambition levels. If you get to them, that's okay. But particularly also on the public side, make sure that ambition is there and create the frameworks in which this ambition can be realized. And in Belgium, as Pierre spoke to it, and it will be spoken about right after this session, capture that ambition level, you get somewhere, right? That's certainly my observation. And the last but not least is about that integration layer, right? Expertise, leadership, ambition levels, and then you have to make it come together. So integrating, both the skill set as well as the technologies that come with it, and then bring it back to my core expertise around an ANGLI platform. Integration, both on the physical side, the functional side, the technical side, give that a home, right? And that's again where digitalization comes in. So these are the things that work together.
Yeah, that's more or less. I think we have more or less the similar barriers. Out of 10, maybe 7 of them are common, I think. That's what I observed here during the discussions of the first day, and here I also experienced the same thing. So, Geneviève, you also have vast knowledge at the commercial side of it. And what would you like to say about the comparison between the public and commercial side? And I know this is not the finance panel, or it's not the Super ESCO panel, so we hold ourselves too much not to speak about finance, not to get into the Super ESCO side, but you may also touch in that sense. Do they have a role in the facilitation, do you think, the Super ESCOs and so? So its floor is yours.
Well, there's so much to say, but just so we have a little bit of fun for a coffee break, I would like to disagree with John on who should be leading. Is that okay with you?
Yes, of course.
Like hockey country.
Yes.
No, I told you to fight here, to make the ratings, and not in the coffee break.
But because you said something about who should be leading the project, should be the customer, and to me, I think it's a tricky road, because the customer, as I said at the beginning, they have expectations sometimes that it's not really aligned with what the EPC can do. So and it's different. In the public sector, like in Canada, they like EPC because there's lack of maintenance, like budget. So it's a way for them to renew obsolete assets. They don't really care about the performance aspect. As long as the equipment is changed, they're fine. Yeah. And like the ESCO were used to that market, and now that they're trying to go into the commercial market, they figure that the private sector is much more on the ROI than anything else, and then they have to adjust. But sometimes they do ask for things that the EPC can do, like because of the financial framework, or because even of the legal framework. Sometimes clients will ask things like they want the ESCO to guarantee escalation rate, they want the inflation, and then the equipment and the operation, so on, and even the weather, right, almost. So they go way beyond what an ESCO can actually guarantee or it's responsible for. So I like to say that the project should lead. So this is why facilitator, and this is how Super ESCO as facilitator, they have to make sure that we need to make sure that the project, and what does it mean? It means that you'll integrate as much as you can from whatever client expectation they have. And sometimes they have this, well, the roof is a bit weak, let's solidify the roof, right, in the project. Well, it's not really like energy savings thing. So we have to somehow find a way to financially make it happen, but still within the framework of the contract and within the framework of the investors. And so that's why I like to call it that the project should be the one that's lead, and this is the role of the facilitator or the role of the Super ESCO, is to make sure that like everybody's request got a little bit toned down or adjusted so it fits into the contract, because ultimately we all win if the project go forward. Like the ESCO win, the client win, and also the ESCO ecosystem will win. Because there are still very few projects in Canada, and Pierre mentioned yesterday with Sofia, we're on the way to raise $1 billion. That's a lot, and even that's a lot less than all the potential, and for that we need more and more projects that will lead to success, right? And that will emulate other projects as well. So.
Thank you. So I feel that there are more to it to discuss, but
Yeah,
because
sure.
of the time, we will stop there. And Rafał, I'd like to hear your comments, especially from the legal side and your national market as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I hear my colleagues speaking about major markets. I'm thinking all the time that, on developing markets like Poland and many other countries that are represented here probably, we do not discuss the things like you, but rather, as Geneviève said, Canadian municipalities like EPCs. In Poland, Polish municipalities usually simply do not know what the EPC is. So they treat it as a way of financing their investments.
Yes. They first ask, what does EPC stand for, right?
This is like a green field and very hard work. That's why I wanted to emphasize that there's a strong need of a permanent education. And it is dedicated to all of the stakeholders, of course, even for banks and ESCOs themselves, especially in financial or legal matters. But the public sector, so the client, is the most important one in this case. It's not like they are not interested in the way you perform the project, they just want to get the effect.
Yeah.
So this is the problem, and public procurement procedures do not help, unfortunately. So they are used to this traditional procuring, and they want to procure construction works, usually. And they usually compare the budget of the project of an EPC project to the traditional one. And they say, well, construction works cost 100, but in terms of EPC, they cost 200. So EPC is a really bad way of procuring energy performance. So we are fighting day by day with very basic problems in Poland and I think in many other countries. You mentioned, John, that you just gather decision makers to start some discussion about the project. In Poland, we invited to the steering committee of our OSS project representatives of I know 5 ministries, but nearly all of them refused. Why is that? There's no policy, as I told you before. They are interested in fulfilling their obligations under EED, but not in developing quickly the market. And of course there are elections ahead, so which doesn't help as well. So sorry that I'm talking about the problems, but they are the most important. We have to overcome them and then try to boost the market and do what you are doing and what I really admire, and it's a pleasure to hear about such interesting solutions.
Let me jump to one thing you said, which is actually a very positive thing, is the knowledge transfer aspect, right? So the training, it's it cannot be underrated, despite a room full of experts in this field, is that it's still too limited, right? The overall knowledge transfer. So it's the same for me, from a digitalization perspective. Your training materials, your online capability of self-learning. Think about the Gen Z type of employees and stakeholders that are coming into our industry and into our market. You got to enable them too. So yes, I couldn't agree more that universities included, but overall, master classes around EPC, ESCO, the industry, the way projects can be set up is crucial. That's also what we strongly believe from an online perspective. This is proven, digital technology for many, many years, right? Online learning, but you got to go and organize it and get it done in such a way that it's meaningful, to the people in Poland, as well as, to financiers, as well as facilitators, and to customers, obviously. That is one big thing that I heard Rafał say, and I couldn't agree more. the other element remains around, yes, how do you pragmatically, get this, the fire starting is the other aspect. And again, here, how do you build a business case? We spoke about it. It's like, how do you get to the CFO particularly around finance and legal? They will want to know, how is this going to work? As much as, the CEOs or the policy makers need to understand how does it fit, into what I'm doing and how do I get re-elected by promoting this type of initiative. This is equally crucial. But to do that, again, enabling them without having, necessarily to spend, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in physical consultancy is also a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So help themselves. We're right back then at the self-service side of things. So that's the other thing I heard Rafał say.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially your comment about the knowledge transfer and the experience transfer in a way, not only the knowledge, because sometimes knowledge may sound a little bit more abstract to the people in the developing countries, like Rafał just mentioned. I mean, my country's ESCO market is in a developing stage as well, not a mature market yet. And we are just learning the letters of the alphabet, but sometimes you're talking about a very high level of a literature, or a grammar rule or so. Sometimes it's hard to understand and speak the same language, especially for the bureaucrats of the public side and so on. So it would be really beneficial to exchange ideas and go and see how they did that EPC, the preparation phase, the contract phase, and then the implementation phase, and especially the implementation phase, because when the public side professionals, if they don't understand, if they cannot foresee how it's going to develop, then it's a big risk. And if there is a big risk and if there is a big if, then they do not want to go forward with that. Then do not want to take risks, especially if the elections are very close. Rafał, I need to stop here, but just for
but we're coming back to the promotion of EPCs through best practices, case studies. This what really speaks to the clients and to the whole market. And because EPCs are of universal kind, the standards. You can apply them everywhere. So this is should be very strong position of our global network to promote these practices.
That can provide us, this global ESCO network, maybe a nice platform to do that. So we are just at our time limit, but I think we started about 5-10 minutes late, so I'm going to use that 10 minutes for the question and answer. If I'd like to have some questions, if you have, to our panelists regarding the practical implementation of EPCs, the facilitation of it, the public side especially, and our new ideas here. Any questions so far? Yeah, there it is. Can we have the mic? There? Yeah, mic is coming, I think. Yeah, there it is.
There is a question.
How unexpected. I've got a question to Ingmar and an answer to Rafał. Let me start with Rafał. Yes, you are the bottleneck. Especially in the world of a standardization, where John and I have worked together on the first grant, where we created a standardized contract. 13 billion of assets under management giving their input. Today, when I take the same contract to a client, and you pointed it out, the lawyer of the municipality says, no, and that's not right, and that should be like this, and that should be like that. So, yes, clearly, standardization is something which is against your profession, because you want to protect your clients. Very well understood. But without standardization, and I'm coming back to Ingmar, to the ambition. If I go to the EIB, they're very clear. don't come under 250 million. Which part of that, Csaba, have you not understood? If I go to Goldman Sachs, they say 2 billion. So how are we going to get up there so that those boys engage? Because actually the 2 billion is the cheapest capital.
Correct. It's the easiest to get to, but you got to figure out the program and the portfolio to have
so
it.
Between
no, it's a very good point.
And I'm making a joke to my Polish friend. A Hungarian and a Polish will never argue with each other because we love each other for centuries. So how are we going to get all of this resolved?
Obviously, I don't have the answer here. Otherwise, I would most likely not be sitting in this panel. But however, there's two major pieces to this equation, and we started, and it will be talked about right after this. One, it's about the horizon, right, and the timeline in which these portfolios are put together. You're never going to get to the Goldman Sachs level if we're talking about. I'll be confrontational if we're talking about 15 years. Many ESCOs think 15 years. Wow, perfect time horizon. They couldn't care less. You say, come with something that takes you to 20, 30 years of an investment timeline, to talk about yield, that John was referring to. That will get their mind thinking as in, so this investment, right, that we're talking about is like a timeline like that. And then, obviously, there is the nominal value, right? So, yes, aggregation was talked about yesterday, big thing, super ESCO, right? The overall model that allows you to see that aggregation, and again, right back into my comfort zone, and put that data together, make it visible and make it addressable without, again, disclosing any of the underlying information, but make that visible from an overall portfolio. We don't know these numbers, but to the financiers and the people who have the capital available with the big tickets tomorrow, you need to present those in a credible manner, and it needs to be backed by real data, right, that is in existence. If you've got those two, so you've got that scalable effect as well as the longer time horizon, now let's go and have a discussion with the big boys, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, and in terms of bad local lawyers, I must say that in most of cases we are able as facilitators to convince them to use the standards. So if it's not us, the bank will come and tell them the same thing, or ESCO will come. So it's not the lawyers are. In my understanding, not the worst thing here. Anyway, just to defend my profession a bit. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? There is one question there.
Hi. I want to ask something, but to whom I don't know. Is there a common barrier you had to overcome until now in all countries, in Europe, in Canada, or in US? A common barrier. Maybe we will have to overcome in Türkiye.
May I answer that question first?
Of course, of course.
The money.
Money, only money. But
that's already.
I want to.
I'm just joking. Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
No,
please.
I want to ask it about legal regulations.
Okay, so maybe I will answer it.
First Rafał and then Geneviève. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it depends on the market, because what I observe on major markets, sometimes you do not have any legal regulations, or they are very simple, because they rely on market solutions on civil code simply. And that is in terms of EPCs and public-private partnerships as well. However, on emerging markets like us, it's always good to prepare quite a strong legal framework. Otherwise, local governments and other public clients are not willing so much to participate in EPC projects. So concerning legal barriers, this is the first thing. And the second, we mentioned a couple of times, are the public procurement procedures that are standards for every contract, including long-term complicated contracts like EPCs or PPPs. So maybe there's a bit of a field to discuss the revision of public procurement law in the EU or in separate countries.
Yes, Geneviève. And John, you'd like to add something as well after Geneviève,
sure.
then maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so in the public sector, I agree with you. In our case, is the procurement process that's a burden to the ESCO. So they have, at the procurement stage, to show the net present value of the project, which requires a lot of work, and theoretically they should be done the IGA without being paid for. So like the way the procurement framework is set up might have a big influence on how fast and how big the EPC is going to be in the public sector. In the private sector, I would say, because it's almost new, like in Canada, like with SAFIAC, and from my point of view, which is working with the client, is the lack of understanding that it's a financial deal first. So the client rapidly goes into like technical details, and it becomes a technical project, and then it becomes them wanting to buy a study, buy like a 200 pages study, and not realizing that's not the end point. The end point is to get the project finance and have positive cash flow. So then the barrier is a lack of understanding, a lack of education, maybe case study and stuff like that, to make them understand that the strength of EPC, and in the case of like shared saving mechanism, is that you don't spend anything, and then for 15 years you're receiving savings, right? And this is the core of the project, and the core of the project is not what chiller is going to be installed, and so on and so forth. So it's really like in the private sector, it's a shift in mentality, saying it's a different vehicle. It's not the typical design and then build and so on. It's a one thing, which is the overall point is get the project done. So misunderstanding, I will say that's the main barrier.
Yes, John.
To Geneviève's point there, there's the two markets, right? I mean, it's important to distinguish between the private, commercial, and the public. But I can categorically state that there's been no performance contracting done in Ireland for the very simple reason. There's been a couple. Okay, they've done a couple of hospitals, blah, blah, blah. But the reason it's not getting done is because it'll sit on the country's balance sheet. And in fact, they've gone ahead with two major hospital retrofits. One was 19 million, the other was 12 million, and they're still on balance sheet. And the Irish government, post-2008, remember that? You know, these guys can't, this is not a priority. Housing is a priority if they're going to load up their balance sheet. Energy poverty is a priority if they're going to load up their balance sheet. Performance contracting is not. And renovating public buildings is not. So, you know, the biggest barrier is not so much whether it's on or off, but the lack of clarity around who is the responsible body that makes that call. And that's where we need clarity. And in fact, I think if we got clarity around the on-off balance sheet from a public sector standpoint, I think the engine would rev up very, very quickly, at least in Ireland, if not other countries that face that same barrier.
Yes. And we're going to stop here. Thank you very much for all of our panelists for their valuable input. I enjoyed it a lot, and I learned a lot. I hope you also enjoyed it as much as I did. So you can always keep asking your questions in the coffee breaks with all of our panelists, and I'd like to thank you for being here again. And we are done now here, right?
Coffee.
It's the coffee, right? Good, thank you.